Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I have some very exciting news for all of you PSVR2 owners out there. Now if you've been following the channel, and precisely if you have watched my latest news video that I have put out last Saturday, then you're gonna know exactly what I'm gonna talk about right now. If you haven't though, cheer up, because Resident Evil 4 is certainly not going to be the last Resident Evil game that we get on PSVR2.
Here we go.
Okay, so recently the director of Resident Evil 4 Remake VR mode, Keisuke Yamakawa, and the producer of the same game, Masato Kumazawa, both did an interview with GameInformer.com in which they were asked about the VR modes of Resident Evil 8 and Resident Evil 4 Remake, the differences between these two games in terms of game mechanics and whatnot, and most importantly, we got a somewhat of a glimpse at how Capcom, or at least the Resident Evil team at Capcom, sees VR today and whether or not it's something that they're truly committed to. Now, as I just mentioned at the beginning of this video, I did cover this article briefly in my latest news video, but since this is kind of a big deal for PSVR2, and because this article seems to have gone under the radar for most people, I mean I only saw like 1 or 2 YouTubers talking about this and literally no headlines whatsoever, which is weird considering that these so-called unbiased professional gaming journalists never seem to hesitate when it comes to shitting all over PSVR2 and putting out fake hate articles about how PSVR2 is over and that Sony hates it and blah blah blah. But when actual developers from a huge successful publisher like Capcom sit down and express their love and commitment for VR and pretty much confirm that they will bring more of their AAA games to PSVR2, for some reason these journalists choose to turn a blind eye. That's why I figured that as a PSVR2 content creator and as a VR and gaming enthusiast, I have to be the one who shines a light on this topic and make a dedicated video on it, and yeah, hopefully it will reach as many people as possible. Oh, and by the way, if you're watching this video and you haven't clicked that subscribe button yet, and if you want to stay up to date with the latest PSVR2 news, reviews and discussions, make sure you hit that subscribe button, that like button, and turn on the bell notifications icon as well. Thanks a lot for your support. Okay, so I'm not gonna focus on the part of this article that talks about how the talented teams at Capcom have managed to adapt Resident Evil 8 and 4 to VR, and why there had to be certain differences between playing as Leon and as Ethan Winters in terms of gameplay and gameplay mechanics, not because it's not interesting, quite the opposite actually. It's very interesting, and I encourage everyone to read the entire article as it really explains a lot and it gives you a good idea on the thought process behind certain gameplay decisions when it comes to porting flat games to VR. But what I am going to focus on for this video is the last 4 paragraphs of this article, which in my opinion represent a clear indication that more Resident Evil games are on their way to PSVR2. Reading from GameInformer.com, quote-unquote, the interviewees say they implemented all the elements they wanted for Resident Evil 4 VR. Once they wrapped up the project, they realized VR was well suited to the franchise, and while they didn't discuss specifics, Kumazawa says they plan to undertake more challenges in the future. And let's focus on the last sentence here for a second. Pay close attention to the wording. Kumazawa says they plan to undertake more challenges in the future. Now what does that sound like to you? To me it sounds like Kumazawa pretty much saying yeah, we will definitely bring more Resident Evil games to VR, aka to PSVR2. Keep in mind that whenever you hear Capcom mentioned VR, what they actually mean to say is PSVR2. Sony and Capcom have a strong partnership together. The Resident Evil VR modes have always been top sellers on the PlayStation Store, and I'll even go as far to say that they are system sellers when it comes to PSVR2. Sony knows that very well, it's been working quite well for them, so they will most likely want to double down on that. Besides, Capcom is already releasing all of the Resident Evil games on PS5 already, and as we all know, PSVR2 is powered by the PS5, so porting the PS5 Resident Evil game to PSVR2 will certainly be an easier task for them than, let's say, making a Quest 3 version. And there is also Capcom's desire to maximize profits. Like every other publisher out there, they want to put out their games on as many platforms as possible. I mean hell, they just released Resident Evil 4 on iOS mobile devices, So yeah, the idea of getting more Resident Evil games on PSVR2, including the upcoming Resident Evil 9, is not really crazy at all if you've been paying attention. But it's not just about the money. It seems like the Resident Evil team at Capcom really loves VR, truly believes in it, and truly wants to see it expand. Quote unquote. Moreover, Kumazawa adds that one of the reasons for releasing the VR versions of Resident Evil Village and 4 as free DLC is that the team wants to try to help expand the VR market. Now look, of course Sony wrote them a big check for those VR modes, and for obvious reason, they wouldn't mention it here. But I can't believe what Mr. Kumazawa is saying here. Capcom has been committed to VR since the start, so it makes perfect sense that one of the reasons behind not charging for the VR modes of RE4 and RE8 is simply because they want more people to try them out and hopefully fall in love with them, just like most of us did, right? But let's continue here with this article. Quote unquote, Yamakawa, personally speaking, joined the project as a director because of his enthusiasm for VR. While conditions such as motion sickness continue to be a concern for players to access VR, Yamakawa says there's been substantial improvement in comparison to the original PlayStation VR headset. When we received the first version of the original VR development kit, I spent a lot of time playing it, Yamakawa says. VR also matches with the Resident Evil franchise really well. I would like VR to get much more popular with the public. Since headsets can still be quite expensive and heavy, I would love for the kits to continue getting lighter and more affordable to make it more approachable to the general audience. So there you have it guys, it can't get more obvious than this. Capcom loves PSVR2, they're committed to it, they will keep releasing Resident Evil games on it, including of course the upcoming Resident Evil 9, and I wouldn't be surprised if they show off Resident Evil 7 running on PSVR2 at Tokyo Game Show in less than 3 months from now. So if you're a PSVR2 enthusiast, and if you love the Resident Evil games, then rejoice. But if you're a doomer who wants to see PSVR2 flop so bad and this news somehow hurt your feelings, then sorry not sorry, but PSVR2 is not going anywhere anytime soon. And that's all I have for you today guys. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it informative, and for more PSVR2 news, reviews and discussions, make sure you hit that subscribe button, that like button, and turn on the notifications as well. Thanks a lot for watching, I'll see you guys in the next video, take care.